Tell us a bit about your background.
Um,
Typically, I don't invite people to start there because it's like, no, tell us what you're doing today. But I think in your case, how you got to sitting there in your comfortable Finger Lakes office is relevant to how you are doing what you're doing today.
yeah, thanks. So background in computer science, mostly in artificial intelligence, also forensic science. I used to be a professor of forensic science at Syracuse University, but not CSI forensics, but forensics of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear forensics.
Hmm.
And that really came about from my work. I was one of 13 appointed, very, very honored to be appointed under two presidential administrations to focus on threats from CBRN, whether man-made or naturally occurring.
I don't know what that means.
Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear threats.
Thank you.
The CBRN, absolutely. And so I focused on, as part of the National Biodefense Science Board, so I focused on predicting events, trying to prevent events, and then if something did occur, what medical diagnostics might be deployed. There was others who were working on, medical countermeasures and things of that nature. And so did that, serve on a number of academic institution boards like Cornell Biomedical, used to serve on Columbia Bioinformatics, University of Buffalo Life Sciences board and advanced technology, do stuff like that. Probably released over 100 solutions to the market in medical related applications, both human and animal related things. And
you say that casually. Do I understand that you conceived and commercialized 100 things through FDA?
I'm not that smart. So with, teams, I'm responsible for teams that would do that, as well as being an inventor on some of them. So yeah, over 100 from things as simple as, a spot check device or ECG or, a blood pressure cuff to as sophisticated as, a high Tesla MRI or multi-slice CAT scanners, nuke medicine, oncology systems, done some microfluidic arrays, worked on some gene therapy. So pretty diverse. I've just been very fortunate, worked with a lot of really smart people. And, so
You're an even bigger deal than I thought.
Oh, no. I mean, there's people out there that just put me to shame. And like I said, it's because of the teams that I've had the.
Funny, we're always comparing.
No, I just have.
I think I'm smart. You should see that guy.
No, just some really good people I've worked with and had opportunities that I normally, wouldn't necessarily have. So a diversity of experiences with startups and different size corporations, and that's I guess that's my background.
I'm scanning who's on the call, and I'm glad to see a couple folks that don't come all the time, but Jeff with Advanced Scanner is here, and Jose, who's a PhD from MIT engineering. I'm sure that you're using a lot of terms that are making them like, oh, I think I'm going to really pay attention today.
Oh, no, I doubt it.
I think so. Okay, so when was the last time you were employed by the man? Who was your last employer?
The Biomedical Institute of the Americas would have been my last employer. I mean, employed by the company I work for today, but I'm one of the founders of it.
Right.
I was out in Texas for a few years helping to create a biomedical research institute that was a joint effort between William Beaumont Army Medical Research Center there in Fort Bliss, west part of Texas, El Paso, West Texas, North Central Mexico, and South Central New Mexico. And so we created this research facility there and worked on some projects when I was out there, mostly in post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, some other things with the military. But that would have been the.
And what year was that?
Left there in 2015 would have been when it wrapped up.
You were one of the, so you may recall, I was director of marketing communications for Cardiac Science in Washington State. They were sold. And the very first event that I attended on my own was where you and I met. It was a Frost and Sullivan event.
Yeah.
I think it was 2011. It might have been 2012. Yeah, it was maybe 2012. So I've known you almost a decade now. And yours is the only I don't remember what you said, but yours is the only presentation that left an impact on me where I was like, I got to know this guy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I can't imagine, and I don't imagine you remember a decade ago what you might have presented, but you left an impression on this young man.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't remember. I used to speak at Frost and Sullivan pretty much every year at their medical device conference, but I can't remember what
I
that
don't even know
was.
if they have one anymore.
I don't either. Was it in San Diego, the conference? Do you remember?
I don't. I think it was. I think I spoke even. I don't remember. Oh, you know what I did? I gave like a workshop.
Okay.
Anyhow, long time ago. So the company for which you presently work, you founded in what year?
So we founded it in 2017, and we received, because we were acquiring some assets of another company that was a publicly traded company, we received SEC approval in July 2017, and that's when we were off to the races.
May I ask how much you needed to raise to acquire the assets you sought?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it took me $1. So what happened is I was acquiring some intellectual property as well as some laboratory equipment, some electronics components, things of that nature. No liabilities, just assets. And out of that, there's a capped royalty revenue that I will pay them on certain types of sales, net sales, up to that cap. And it was a really good deal.
I'd say, I mean, you couldn't have bargained down from $1. I mean, even you couldn't have gotten to the 2 digits.
Yeah, it was.
So was it like, but you also got like hard physical assets.
Yeah, matter of fact.
So was it just like, look, I'm going to put this stuff on my curb and just come and pick it up?
No, we actually had the building. They also gave us the building that the company was presently in for a year, all the furniture that was in it. And
how did you find this opportunity?
So it was sort of interesting. What happened is the company brought me in as a consultant, excuse me, to assess where they were heading as a corporation. And did it make sense? Were they on the right track? Did they need to raise more money? And so they just asked me to take a look at it. So I was there for several months, and I put together a proposal, my recommendation to the board as to what the company should do, which they accepted. And really, they were a startup that was burning $1.5 million a month. And they had gone through a lot of cash. They didn't really have that seasoned of a management team. And so my recommendation was to gracefully shut down the company because they were getting ready to pull in another, I think, 12 million from the outside. And I said, that's still not going to get you where you need to be. And they were just bloated and so forth. So the board agreed with that. And so I gracefully brought down the company with a few other people, and it closed in December of 2016. And then I helped get rid of some of their assets that they, physical types of things that they didn't want. And then I made a proposal, myself and one other gentleman, that we acquire the assets of the company for the deal that ultimately got put together. And so they agreed to it.
And when you did that, what was your vision?
Vision was to take the solution into a different direction, both technologically. There were certain things that I wanted, and it was to also take it into different markets that, where they were headed. So we're
talking about, for simplicity,
yeah.
Can you think of it as one basic concept, or no, I'm going to get this and there are 10 things I'm going to do? Or was it like a device or a thing that you were like, no, if you think of it this way, we could do it that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it was certainly, it had a device component, a data acquisition component. It also had cloud computing types of things and some analytics. They were focused on consumer markets, animal space, companion animals, primarily canine. And
do you have a prototype, anything you can hold up, give us a sense of what you're working on?
Yeah, well, this is a third generation. This is not what we go to market with, but this is a collar, a canine collar. And that's a sensor, I've got it upside down there. That's a sensor in the middle. Matter of fact, the sensor out of the frame looks like this here. It's about this is about 1.2 ounces. And then what's inside of it is this PCB. It's a part flex, part rigid.
I feel I have to write Andre and make sure he gets on this call. He just released something into the market in the veterinary space.
Okay. I'm gonna open my door here for a minute.
Okay, I just sent him a note. Okay, so the thing that you held up was the main project that was burning $1.5 million. You've taken it in a different direction, but that was the main concept.
Yeah, matter of fact, if you want to sort of look at a comparison where they were at, this was their version.
Oh my.
And so you can see we cut weight by 70%, size by 70%.
How much of, to be fair to them, the bigger piece you held, was
Yep.
that materially the best technology offered 5 or 6 years ago?
No, because with on short order, we put this out, and where we're going with our go-to-market version is even beyond this. And so, so I'm not saying the team wasn't capable. Don't get me wrong. It's and the tech's great, but there's just so many more things that we can do with it. We've even cut the cost of goods in half, and continue to advance it. I mean, when we acquired the assets, we got about 30 patents. We're now at 76 patents that have been issued.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
these patents are all domestic, US?
No. So yeah, so I don't, it's a great point. I don't want to be misleading. So we probably have about 26 unique patents that we filed in the US, and that other, 50 is what's been approved in other geographies around the world.
I'm gonna have Jose join us because he's my guy when I think of connected wireless medical devices.
Okay.
He's the guy I go to. And it sounds, well, is that funny? Isn't that true? You're my connected wireless medical device guy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's
the MIT PhD.
Music to my ears. It's all right up my alley. Really cool. Nice to meet you.
You guys can talk shop over my head. I don't mind. So this miniaturization was a challenge. It continues to be a challenge, I imagine. And Jose, you're welcome to take the interview from here and ask him some things, because I'm very intrigued to know, but I don't know what I don't know.
No, yeah, I haven't been here for a couple of weeks. When I saw the subject matter of this week's
I know he attracts
session, I was like, oh, that sounds super interesting.
What is the core? Alt's crowd.
Yeah, what is at the core, of the innovation and technology?
Yeah, so what we use is ultra wideband radar for biometric sensing, so we don't have to be in contact with the body, and we can get a number of vital signs. What we do, though, Jose, is we collect context-based vital signs. So there's a number of chips that are also telling us what that animal is doing at the time that we collect the data, and that way we can provide context to the professional. And that professional could be a vet, it could be somebody raising horses, or production animals or whatever, or it could be a CRO that has mice in a lab, or primates, or whatever the case may be. So the same tech works for all of them, and things like hair and fur and bone and air and stuff don't interfere with our signal. So that's sort of the primary is ultra wideband radar.
May I ask? So you said non-touch, but it's a collar. So I'm thinking your non-touch means we don't have to shave the fur.
No, really, whether this is a medical collar or not, with a traditional collar on a dog, for instance, you should have 2 fingers between the neck of the animal and the collar, because you don't want it to be pulling hard against them. Yeah, and so this can be, so we have a harness version and a collar version that we're going to release as our first instance, but we also have a handheld. We have one that can go on an animal feeder. It can be in a number of different things. So, but we need to be reasonably close to the body, right? It's not like we're a meter away collecting the data, unless I want to ramp power beyond legal limits.
Right. So
what are you actually measuring? Hey, Joe, you said I was doing this interview, so please keep it down.
Sorry, and then you know what? I'm going to put myself on mute, and I'm going to shut my camera. Go ahead.
No, what are you actually measuring? I mean, what vitals can you get with the ultra wideband?
Yeah, so some will depend on location. So let's say on the neck, we can get heart rate, rest rate, heart rate variability. We can get core body temperature. We can get banded blood pressure. So we can't get you systolic, diastolic, but we could tell you you're low, normal, or high with the blood pressure. If you're in a harness or closer to the heart and lungs, we can tell heart wall motion, cardiac volume, ejection fraction, lungs expansion and contraction, fluid in the lungs. I think I said heart wall thickness would be another one. And then we did a grant with Johns Hopkins University. We won a grant from them, their Department of Radiation Oncology and Molecular Sciences, where we could actually identify tumors in the body. Or I should say a mass. We couldn't tell you if it was cancerous or not, but what they were trying to do is keep the radiation on lung cancer tumors. And of course, you get the heart pumping, which moves the tumor, right? You can get lungs expanding and contraction. And what we could do is see the location, the shape, and the motion, and feed that back to a linear accelerator in about 100 milliseconds. And then they could adjust beam through a multi-leaf collimator and intensity modulation and so forth to keep it on the tumor. So those are the types of things. We have a laundry list of things that we want to continue to do, but that's the primary.
So what you're looking at is essentially just like the micro motions of the volume. Like that's how you get respiration. I can imagine that's how you get heart rate. I thought I heard you say also temperature. Is that also using the ultra wideband or something different?
No. So we have multiple sensors in there. We have Wi-Fi, for communications, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. We have also an ISM band radio that communicates with some other things. We have a MEMS microphone. You can get heart and lung sounds. We have accelerometer, gyro, light sensor, and so forth. So for core body temperature, that's not ultra wideband radar that we use. That's a different type of technology. And you're absolutely right. So ultra wideband radar is really great at picking up all the micro motions, down to about a millimeter. Again, because we operate about 50% legal limit, we could ramp that more if we want to. We have different antenna designs that'll have different spread patterns and so forth. And so those are the types of things. But the beauty of UWB is we can also get anatomical and also some additional functional information. So it's like ultrasound, and I don't mean to, so just tell me to shut up if I'm already telling you stuff, but so we send radio waves into the body, and it's a lot like ultrasound, and where they're getting a reflected wave, the same thing happens. We send those radio waves in, some gets absorbed, some gets scattered, and then some gets reflected. Well, each part of the body has a unique dielectric reflection. And we know how to interpret that dielectric reflection. So we can say, oh, we're looking at the liver, we're looking at a heart, this is fatty tissue, and so forth. Now, if we wanted to build a phased array, do a linear array or something, or do beam steering and things of that nature, we could do it. But then, a lot more receive and transmit antennas. And of course, the cost of goods starts going up considerably. We could do synthetic aperture radar, sweep the beam, then reconstruct. So there's a lot of things we can do with it. And most of that is what our patents are around, on the UWB side.
Yeah, makes sense. I got a ton of technical questions, but I don't want to bore the rest of you. So I know there are a couple of other guys. So, but thank you. That sounds super interesting. Yeah, really cool.
Well, thank you.
I have to laugh, Al, as you were speaking. 3 of the 4 gentlemen sharing the screen with you were nodding and like, oh yeah, shit, I get it.
Nodding off, you mean falling asleep?
No, not at all. They were all like nodding and like, yeah, cool. I don't know what you're talking about. First, Jeff, that hat is amazing. You look really, really good today.
I'm freezing in my office. I'm sorry.
It's a good look. No, it's seriously a good look. And Jonathan does not look as though he's freezing in California there. I brought Jeff on because he's working on scanning technology, and I thought there would be definitely some overlap where you might have something relevant to share, an insight or something. And Jeff, Jonathan, you just asked a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for sharing this story. And, I've had some parallels in my life when we were back in Switzerland doing accelerometers in 2002 for sports training that, was an early precursor to, a lot of the heart rate monitors and a lot of the, sports watches that you see today. Right. I was wondering, are you thinking about consumer applications?
Yeah, so initially, we're 100% focused on animal, though our IP also covers human. And we're doing that because less regulation, it's quicker to market, less dollars, right? Quicker to revenues. And then we'd like to leverage our revenues to move to human consumer and human clinical. And so on top of that, we're developing this, though we're not required because we're not putting radiation into the body. We're not required by the FDA to do this under design controls, but we are. Because I think at some point, animals are going to be regulated just like humans. I mean, they are with certain things, right? With drugs, topicals, and again, x-rays or things of that nature. And so we're doing that on purpose. We're also doing a bunch of animal studies. So that also can apply to that human application. And I will say, we don't see ourselves as the company that's going to be taking all this stuff to market, right? We're a bunch of innovators. We've all taken things from concept to commercialization, but we'll probably work with strategics or others that have interest in that and look to either license or spin out sort of applications.
Are you speaking with strategics at all yet?
We are on the animal side. I've spoken with a couple on the human side who do both human and animal, and they also wanted to lead with animal. We've already started, though we don't introduce to market probably until Q1 2023. We have already started getting letters of intent for commitments for what it will come off the manufacturing line. And I should say, just as a sidebar, so this is a data acquisition device. And a lot of times people have a tendency to focus on it because, hey, you can hold it up, it's sort of neat or whatever. Though venture capitalists seem to hate hardware. But we have a mobile app as well. We have a cloud-based dashboard with analytics. So it's open APIs. You could use this as a gateway. If somebody had a Bluetooth scale or something, they want to communicate through our device, they could do that. So long-winded answer, Jonathan, to your question. Yes, we are thinking about those things, but further down the line. I am personally not a huge fan of consumer markets. They're big, but I'm used to the professional side of things. So like if I took this to consumers on the pet side, my margins would probably be horrible. And
I'm happy to make some introductions in the sports performance category, which is a much higher standard, and they're willing to pay much higher margins. I mean, we were early in telling athletes, hey, I can shave 1 minute off your time. They would pay anything for that. So, I mean, the flip side is that, we've seen these biometric devices, the Fitbits and all that kind of stuff. They've sold well to large companies, but at the end of the day, I think Dave Asprey said it best. A lot of the biometric stuff is kind of like masturbation. It doesn't really serve much purpose. It feels good at the moment, but I always find that a very strong description of how the consumer.
This is a family show.
Yeah,
well, it's a natural act.
I think I'm going to usher you off the screen here and point everyone's attention to Jeff.
Get this under control, man. It's like, no, I hear what you're saying.
If you have some performance driving outputs that can be, strong applications, and I do have a few people who are working on, for example, solutions for periphery and central fatigue, and they work with the leading athletes around the world. That might be quite interesting to actually associate that with an output-based, performance-based solution. Then I think you have a very, very viable product, and that stands to pass into good investability categories.
Yeah, I hear you. Matter of fact, it's what you described is very analogous to some of the markets that have approached us. So, for instance, IBM. It was looking to secure, still are, a contract with Department of Homeland Security, who has 1,500 canines and 500 equines. Well, they can't monitor their health. It's really tough, for them to monitor what's going on with the animal, especially some of them are deployed in remote locations. So IBM came up and said, we don't want your mobile app. We don't want your cloud. We're going to do our own, but we need the data that comes off this. So they actually tested us against all human and animal wearables. And they selected ours because they said ours was the only solution that would give them what they were looking for. DHS said that they are willing to pay $1,500 per collar. And because a DHS animal or a Border Patrol canine, for instance, is a $300,000 animal.
How
And you know,
interesting.
the training and the cost to maintain a horse is over $1 million. And so for them to spend $1,500 per year, because it's a SaaS model per year, is nothing against a $300,000 asset. Vets have a similar thing. The vets can't monitor an animal when it goes home post-surgery, or maybe it's obesity management, or it's got some disease state. Well, this now gives them the ability to monitor the animal's health remotely and be alerted if they're surpassing certain thresholds that have been set. So that's sort of analogous, you know, to that performance of the athlete, right? A unique market. They're willing to pay for sure. And a lot of these places have difficult with stickiness, like Fitbit, you know, Garmin. And so they just, you know, hey, it's nice for 3 months and then it ends up in a drawer somewhere because it's tough keeping the stickiness. And so anyway, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Do you think that this is a very futuristic question, but say 50 years from now, do you think every domestic pet in America will have a biometric so that it'll be just easier for vets to know when, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's headed in that direction with injectables. You know, we're doing injectables as well. And so when you think about the identification chips,
We as a community or you?
oh, as a company.
Oh, okay.
And it's much easier on the animal side again. But you know, you see that with identifying animals, right? A lot of them have chips already embedded in them. So I think it's definitely moving in that direction. And animals, you know, unlike the day when I was growing up, and I'm an old guy now, but you know, animals were not necessarily seen as a family member. Right now, they're seen as a member of the family, and and some of the highest spending is on people's companion animals.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when you talked about a canine at Border Patrol as an asset, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff, I brought you on a long time ago. You've been patient. I'm just thinking that you have something quite relevant that I would not conceive.
I'm fascinated on so many levels about what you're doing. It's really amazing. You know, my mind goes to, you know, one of our board members, he brought like flea and tick products to market from J&J through commercialization. So if you're looking for those things, I'm sure he'd be fascinated in what you're doing. I don't know if you're looking for that kind of conversation right now. And I can also
we definitely are, Jeff. You know, so I'm always open to have conversations, right? I mean, highly collaborative, because it's going to be done by a group of people, not, you know, like us in some vacuum. And we did just close our seed round, and we're getting ready to start moving with our Series A. And I've personally invested money in the company. I mean, we took no money for the first few years, but now for me to take this to the point of getting to market, I had to go to outside money. So anybody that might be interested in the product or collaboration or funding, yeah, definitely love the introduction.
he was all of those things for us, so I'm happy to make.
As always, I am recording this. It will be available publicly. You can share this with whomever you like.
Oh, perfect.
They have a backstory before they even get on the phone with Al.
Can you talk more about, you talked about tracking the position of organs, you know, or tumors? Is that at the surface? Is that within the body?
Yeah, it's within the body. So you could definitely see like a lipoma, right? A fatty tumor that would be more surface oriented. So you could pick those up because fat has a different dielectric than your typical skin does and so forth. But the tumors were actually lung tumors. So we were picking up the nodules in the lungs, and then they wanted to move to liver or pancreas next. But there we were going to be, because they implant fiducials, markers in those who are getting radiotherapy and liver or pancreatic cancer, they wanted to see if we could identify the fiducials versus a particular, you know, tumor location. So those are the types of things we can do. Now, I don't want to mislead anybody on this call. You're not, you know, if you start getting sub-millimeter, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, you know, to start picking up certain things unless I start going to some sort of an array approach versus one receive, one transmit type of antenna.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a model, but so we're trying to track, intraoperatively track soft tissue for navigation systems. So I'm really kind of familiar with your space. You know, you're not exactly doing the same thing we're doing, but I know once you're somebody successful and prove this in animals, I can't imagine you'd have a lot of interest from the navigation companies and anybody doing surgery. This is a big problem on a regular basis for everybody.
Will you share with Al your background? and what you're working on, he doesn't know.
Well, okay. So sorry, my company is Advanced Scanners, and we build an optical scanner. And the idea is to replace the existing equipment that surgical navigation systems are using, both to register the patient and then to do something that's not being done today, which is intraoperatively monitor the position of the patient during surgery.
Okay.
Starting with rigid tissue and then biomechanically modeling the soft tissue throughout the procedure. And so we're doing it optically. There is ultrasound where is kind of a workaround right now to, and there's like Brain Lab and companies like that are trying to use that, an example of, but everybody's got problems, and none of the solutions are good. They're all either very invasive, they introduce, a lot of radiation, or, they're very disruptive to like,
Remind me, are yours is an engineering and academic background, is that right?
I'm just an entrepreneur.
Just some guy.
I meet up with really smart engineers to build things, and then I help them commercialize and capitalize on the opportunities.
You got Jonathan back. He's got even more ideas and questions and things for you. So Jonathan, go ahead. And next, I'm going to invite Paul on to ask him some questions from a supply chain standpoint.
Now, this is exciting. I wanted to know a couple things. First of all, there's the big announcement of the meta universe or the metaverse. How do you see this product kind of evolving to support that evolution in social media? The other question that I had was related to analogous to the accelerometers, where the prices dropped significantly once they were included in cars for airbags. Are you seeing sensor pricing drop significantly, and where are the sensors that you need with the greatest amount of drop before it becomes really valuable for the business?
So I'll start with the last one first, the last question first. So I think the most expensive chip we have is an ultra wideband radar chip. And we see with time, not out of the gate, going to an ASIC. We know that we can put a lot of these into one core, a lot of what we have on that board that I show you into one core, and probably cut the cost of goods by maybe 40%, which would be huge. Things like, I think right now we're seeing some price increases, which is not the norm just because of supply chain issues, especially in Wi-Fi Bluetooth modules that are already FCC approved. They're self-contained, right? Microcontroller, Wi-Fi Bluetooth chips, the antennas, they've already gone through FCC testing, and they're sort of nice. And there's some pretty nice ones. And of course, the smaller the footprint, the more the price seems to be going up. We're seeing some lead times in big production quantities over a year in certain chips. Ultra wideband, I'm in good shape on. We have, well over 10,000 of those chips right now in stock. The antennas are specially made, so we design those antennas, and they're fabbed. They're a ceramic type of antenna, but they're fabbed for us, so we don't have an issue with those. But it's in some of the more common things that we see some supply chain issues. And we're doing what we can to mitigate that. As far as the meta universe, I'm going to have to claim a little bit of ignorance. Jonathan, can you enlighten me a little bit more when you're talking about it from a social media perspective? If you could enlighten me, I'd appreciate it.
Isn't that going to be very consumer based, which he's kind of avoiding for right now? You just put yourself on mute again. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the metaverse, is this general concept of multiple iterations of the same environment. So let's take in architecture right now. Right now, we can build something with AutoCAD. We can put it in a space. We can start to look at how shadows play out over that universe. We can start to actually make projections with AI machine learning to see how people flow and move through the space, and then make multiple iterations of those typical environments, and then optimize and see what would be the best output, and then pull that back out of that meta or multiverse of possibilities and bring back to the physical world the actual most optimal or likely optimal solution. So the what Facebook has communicated is that there's going to be this kind of world where people will go in virtually, either through virtual reality or augmented reality, and discover all sorts of environments, or modify who they are, how they look, within these environments, and they will play out kind of like Ready Player One or some other type of utopian universe where everything is modifiable. But of course, in that universe, people do need to know where they are. People need to recognize, oh, that person's heart rate actually is increasing. They're scared or they're excited. And so there's a massive requirement for data positioning, and not just about the individual, but also peri-individual. So where that person sits in space. And so one of the things that I was curious about is how that technology pointed towards an individual or a mammal or a human is one thing, but also can it give you contextual value into the related space that that person is in?
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. That's great. And I'm looking forward actually to that meta universe, so I don't have to pay for plastic surgery. I can just actually look like something different there. But anyway, actually we do provide for the individual today contextual based information. So we wrap that in contextual markers to then present that the medical data. I do see the ability to incorporate this much more broadly. So and I'll take probably a pretty stupid example, but cowboys still ride the range and they look at cattle and even when you think of pig farmers and things of that nature, and they have a double-digit loss rate in 12 or 13% loss rate at birthing, and also that's primarily where it occurs. Or you might have 1,000-pound sow roll over on their piglet and kill it or whatever. And so there's all these sensors that these farmers are wanting to use to get a holistic picture of what's going on. And when the cowboy's riding the range, he doesn't have to try to call out the one that appears to be sick. Now he knows where there's an instance occurring. So you could absolutely do this. And I'll give you sort of a weird solution. So years ago, I was the lead on a personal status monitor for US military. And we were to remotely monitor soldiers' health in the field, soldiers, Marine, whatever the case may be. And we were to do that in a non-invasive manner and in a way that they didn't have to have sensors and stuff stuck all over their body and so forth. But back to that sort of meta universe, we knew everybody that was in the field with them, and they all had a unique sort of identifier, just like our solution has a unique identifier, so we know who it's tagged to. Plus, every single animal or person has a unique dielectric signature. So even if we didn't have a unique identifier and you were wearing the solution, we could tell by your biometric signature that it was you. And so, with that Army project that was funded out of Fort Detrick, we were showing that where all the soldiers were at, if somebody took a hit, for instance, whether it was a round or an explosion or whatever the case may be, we could triage them without anybody else being present. And then we would send bits and pieces of their data along with other people's data to another area, sort of a far forward area, where if enemy was picking up the signal, they would never know how many. They can never pull it all back together, type of thing. I probably shouldn't use the word never, right? The way technology moves. But, and so we were looking at that whole environment sort of holistically. We did some of that in biodefense that I was mentioning too, where we had to look at sort of holistic scenarios for big geographies. There it was obviously threats that we were looking at. But I see where this could certainly play. The other thing is you can see having these sensors embedded all over the place to where you're sitting on your sofa, and by the way, it's taking your vitals. You're laying in your bed and it's collecting your vitals. You don't have to have a camera. I will tell you, and I can't tell you who, but we've had 2 automobile manufacturers already approach us and want us to know if we can embed this in their cars.
Yeah, I mean, the Ford has a Ford X team that is very specialized in analytics, and I mean, they have sensors on the steering wheels where you can feel grip tension, and then they will modify music or recommend routes that are more friendly to de-stress the person before they arrive home. And so we see these trends happening. It's happening actually quite fast. I think you probably have a great licensing, technology partnership opportunities all across the board in various categories.
I appreciate that. We've done a number of academic studies in colleges of veterinary medicine, and we actually had done what we were predicting the onset of osteoarthritis in certain breeds of canine almost 2 years in advance before the symptoms ever started showing up. So we do have over 1 million hours of animal data we've already collected, and we're applying to your comment earlier about machine learning techniques. And ultimately, because my world is in that, that's why the company's called One Health Group. Ultimately, my world's in One Health, right? That's because if you think of infectious disease, about 7 out of 10 start in animals, make a leap to human. They get about 70% of our chronic diseases. And then there's vector-borne diseases. So animal ones are zoonotic, vector-borne or ones from fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, stuff like that. And so we want to take the learnings on the animal side, the learnings on the human side, and figure out what are some of the new things you can do to predict and hopefully try to prevent or mitigate, serious issues. So it is a big data problem without a doubt. But yeah, I totally agree.
Thank you, Jonathan. I always appreciate when you join us. You always add a lot to the conversation. And
It was a pleasure.
on a related note, it's conversations like this one that give me the most joy. Like I was like, I know Al, he's smart. He'll have something good to say. That was the amount of planning, and look at the conversations that are happening. So I'm really glad to help bring you folks together. I want to get to Paul next, but just quickly, I guess your other call ended. Yay, you got to join us a bit, but Andre just shared with the group a veterinary monitoring device that you released in the last week or two.
Yeah, the pre-production unit. It's actually not a monitoring device. It's actually a therapeutic device.
Okay, so we'll get to you. So hang on. Paul, I wanted to ask you, I know how your mind works, well, a little bit anyhow. And what have you heard in the last 45 minutes that you can think of from a supply chain standpoint? It came up a few times in the conversation.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, but when you're launching a product with the supply chain challenges that you alluded to within the year-long waiting list and things like that, what we're finding out it's there's a lot of planning that you've got to get to, and if you can, really, I have a client right now that's rethinking design concepts so the sub-assemblies are easier to assemble. Because what we're doing is saying, hey, because you need to be flexible, because you're going to bring your product from different times, they're coming in at different times now from different sources. You've got to add a layer of flexibility there. Mm-hmm. Maybe really look at your design so that when they do come in, it's very quickly to put together. That's kind of what we do here in the US. Okay. We help companies with we coined the term and trademarked it to call it last mile manufacturing. But what we're doing is trying to support people that do have these challenging supply chain issues to then very quickly give you the flexibility to go to whichever source has the best product for you, the best price and the best timelines. Yeah. As long as the design elements are the same, bring them together, and then we can be super efficient in putting the pieces together so that then you can address the market needs.
Al, is there a specific supply chain issue that's kind of foremost for you right now? Maybe we could just talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so it's a little bit interesting. So we've been able to find all the components we need. However, I'm not willing to source things out of China because we have too many federal government, focus areas that are of interest, and they've already come out and said, as much sourcing in the U.S. or other sorts of nations that we can. So, we're sort of sourced in the United States, we're made in the United States. And so on the Wi-Fi Bluetooth, some of the modules were some of the more challenging, because they're combination microcontroller, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth antennas all in a module. And I need a very small footprint, very small power, low power consumption and so forth. Now I can pick those up out of China for about 1/10 of the cost, but I'm not going to do it just because of some of our customers' requirements and demands. Plus, I am so pro United States, having grown up in a military family, so I would say that is probably the primary issue is those modules, because there's only a few out there with the footprint that I need, because we're trying to keep this thing. I told you that was 1.2 ounces. Our one that we're going to market with is even smaller and lighter. And so, we're shoving a lot into a very small space. With the the battery is probably the largest component.
Putting you on the spot, Paul, but anything leap to mind or follow-up conversation?
No, the model is exactly that, right? So just make sure your design, the way they come in and how you putting them together is not complicated, because that'll give you added flexibility. Just put that into the BOM. So
yeah, I hear you. Matter of fact, we have our PCB, manufacturer. They're flex, rigid type of things. our plastics people, so our production house is a turnkey solution. And so they're going to stage everything there. They're going to test everything. They're going to ship it all out. And thank God I've been in the industry long enough that we've been working with some pretty good players, but we've gotten them involved, obviously, to say, hey, how is this, good for manufacturability? What can you simplify? What makes sense? Because we don't want to make their life a nightmare, because it'll just introduce errors that we don't want to have during the manufacturing process. So we're trying to do that very early on. And then I will tell you, though, Paul, most of our stuff is done outside. So we're a very small team of researchers and developers, but I'm leveraging sort of trusted sources that I've used before in order to get to market quicker, and actually for less money than me trying to build an internal team from day one of funding. So, but I definitely appreciate what you're saying. I mean, if you ever want to have a sidebar conversation, always happy to do that, or put you in contact with our developers.
Yeah, I'd love that. And also I've got some investors. I work with 3 or 4 VC firms out of the Silicon Valley and Canada and stuff like that. So, because I mentor their portfolio companies.
Okay, very good.
And been doing that for years. So I think there's one, Lifeboat.Ventures comes to mind.
Okay.
Not because they focus on animals and animal therapies, but I think the sensors from a leveraging IP perspective.
Yeah.
And they're funded, and they're looking for companies that have an impact as well. So they're really big into disaster relief. So if your sensors, right, with your ultra wideband radar capabilities can do, like one example is they were looking for a sensor that could drop 1 in every square mile of the planet to like oceans and forests and stuff like that to track wildfires and natural events.
Okay.
That was one idea that they were noodling in their head, right? And another one was sensing air quality post-COVID in restaurants and buildings, small buildings and office structures. So you could, clean the air, and that'll be responsive to the air particles coming in through the vents and stuff like that. So sensors is in their mind. I think it'll be a good, just an open blue sky conversation if you think that's valuable. I understand focus is everything. So
Thank you, Paul. And unrelated, Sandeep wrote me last night. I suggested I can meet after this call if that's possible for you guys. Andre, tell us what you made. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. See you guys.
Hi, Albert. Sorry I wasn't on earlier. I was actually on with a customer, so that comes first. We've been developing for a number of years now. We just introduced a pre-production model of a therapeutic device for treating musculoskeletal conditions in animals. We've done clinical studies, randomized placebo-controlled studies on osteoarthritis in the horse model. We've done some human studies as well. So we're introducing first this veterinary version. And so we have it out right now for some proof of concept. It's a Prft Therapy, which is pulsed radio frequency therapy that's applied non-invasively to a musculoskeletal pain condition in animals. In horses, you got things like navicular syndrome, bowed tendon, stifle problems, back problems. In dogs, there's hip dysplasia, a number of other conditions like that. And we've had really excellent results with it on our testing. And so now we've put out the first several units for pre-production analysis. And then we're probably going to be introducing, probably in January, February, the actual commercial version of it.
Oh, congratulations. That's nice. That's huge for the animal markets, as I don't have to tell you. I mean, you're already citing a number of the reasons.
Yeah, no, it's
Al, would you
dramatic.
hold up what it is that you're working on? Because he doesn't have that context.
Oh, yeah. So this is a third. This is not our go-to-market, but this is a Canine Collar.
Oh,
and
okay.
And this is the sensor that is in the middle of this collar, and it collects a lot of different. It's diagnostic quality data that we collect on the animals for a number of different vital signs.
And does it do anything like gait analysis?
We do. So we have a gyro and accelerometer and so forth. We can do like body postures, gait analysis, things of that nature, distance traveled, energy expended throughout the day, calories burned, sleep quality, longest periods, things like that.
That's very cool. That's we could have used that in our horse study because we had to do gait analysis with video monitoring. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, and horses, I mean, of course, huge, costs associated with those. People are really willing to spend the money to ensure that the horse is doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've also treated conditions. There's a condition in dogs. I don't know if you know. It's called wobblers, and wobblers is the front section of a larger dog's start to lose some of their control, and they literally wobble from side to side. And it's a musculoskeletal condition, and our device has treated that successfully. It sounds like your monitor could probably monitor the improvement level in the wobbler condition.
Yeah, I would think that that would be the case. I hadn't heard about that, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. And that would probably be an algorithm modification. But with some of the gait analysis, we are trying to see if one leg, for instance, is being favored over another,
Right.
or perhaps one is not actually touching the ground all the way. There's a number of different things. Just like in primates, body posture is really key, because in some of the primate labs, if they're hunched over or whatever the case may be, it's sort of telling what their disposition is. And so I hear you. It's tremendous what you're doing, because that is so needed. I'm sure the vets will be thrilled.
Yeah, so far things are looking well. In dogs, in hip dysplasia, that's interesting with hip dysplasia, like in collies and shepherds,
Yeah.
where, one side of the hip is actually affected more, and then they favor the other side, which causes then arthritic problems on the other side. So it's kind of a dual impact when they have that kind of problem. So perhaps your monitoring can detect that.
Yeah,
Al,
we did-
maybe 2022 will be the year that I get you to come out to the conference, because most of the people that you met today will be there. They've already pretty much committed to May 10th through the 12th, and I'd love to get you
Okay.
guys together. Nikhil, I invited you on because if I have a reasonable understanding of what you're working on, there's a lot of overlap, and I thought you might have something to add to the conversation. Thank you, Andre.
Andre, thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Hey, Al, how's it going? And actually, I did actually reach out to Al prior to this, and Al and I will catch up next week. But yeah, and Joe, I think the last time I was on, it was with Gunter Wessels.
Yep.
And that was some time ago. But yeah, we're in a kind of similar space. I mean, focusing on non-contact monitoring of humans and animals. We don't do this from UWB race. We do this from RGB. So we're effectively using video to extract physiological signals from humans. But with animals, we're looking to extract respiratory signals by using motion amplification. So if we were, say, for example, monitoring let's say a number of cattle in a field, what our algorithms would do using computer vision is monitor the respiratory patterns of that cattle, especially because if you see an increase in respiratory rates, cattle may be at risk of heat stress, and that's a problem because that reduces pregnancy rates and et cetera. That reduces profitability for farmers. So I guess my question is more of a technical question. So I mean, how sensitive is the UWB sensor that you have to motion? I mean, this is something that we have to compensate heavily for. I haven't played with UWB signals. I don't know how robust they are to motion. RGB signals are not that robust to motion, but does require the animal to be relatively still. Is that the same issue you guys have as well?
Yeah, so without a doubt, if you have a fairly stationary animal, you can get cleaner signal. That said, we do have some approaches or techniques that we use to try to limit motion artifacts. So we could get a horse, for instance, at a trot, but if one was at an all-out gallop, it's probably going to introduce a lot of motion artifacts that would be difficult. So if a canine is moving around or a feline's moving around, yes, we can get that. And what we try to do is in a harness or in the collar, there's some sort of industrial design tricks that we use to try to help with the motion artifacts. But then we also have some algorithmic things because we have a accelerometer and gyro and MEMS microphone, some other things that we can see what's going on, try to subtract, for lack of a better way to say, some of that motion out. But still is always nicer,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, one thing we can take offline next week is I was going to discuss with you. We work quite closely with Microsoft to distribute our product to a lot of animal-related organizations. So it could be a good route in if for a potential collaboration.
You're already in market then?
Sorry, yeah, we're already in the market. Yeah.
Very
How long
good.
have you been on the market?
Well, for the human health side, we've been on the market for about 12 months. For the animal health side, we've been on the market for 3 months. So very, very new into the animal space. We're kind of doing the reverse of what Al did.
Are you close to profitability yet, or is that still a way off?
We're close to operational profitability, but I think profitability is still about 12 months away. We recently we're recently launching our Series A deal at the end of this month.
This is exciting that I got to know you before you were filthy rich. I like that. Makes me feel as though I've gotten in on the ground floor, even though I will not benefit financially.
I think you're talking about Al there, not
No, I was talking about you.
He's not talking. I went broke doing this thing, because I was the funder of it to start out with. So
yeah. No, I had a similar experience to you, burning out a bunch of my credit line, funding the company, scrambling some other capital together.
yeah.
Well, if you can find
I
another
look forward
couple
to our
hundred quid, maybe come out to San Diego. Gunter will be there. I hope Al will be, and maybe there'll be some good conversations there. So thanks for,
I'll actually be on the West Coast in January. So yeah,
it's in May, so I don't know if I can keep you out there that long, but okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
See you
joining.
guys.
Take care.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah, you bet.
It was, you know, as I intended, this was more of a talk. Let's see who's here and what kind of ideas come together. And I
Yeah.
think we made a few reasonable avenues for you to have a conversation after this call.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate the invite and I appreciated everybody's questions and putting up with my verboseness. So thanks.
You were fine. We have worse. In the chat, I added a link. Maybe 6 years ago, I did a week in Adelaide, Australia, for an incubator.
Okay.
And among the people I met there was Jeremy Bachneck, and he is the founder of a company called Alpha Vet Tech.
Okay.
And there's a video link there. I haven't watched it yet. I just saw it was on his LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
A video, which I presume captures his work to date. And if you'll indulge me, I was so pleased to see that he's adopted the name that I suggested in that brainstorming. They are going to market as Wireless Zoo.
Wow. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, I didn't, you know, profit from that, but it's all good. Good
You
karma.
should have trademarked it. Yeah.
If I had thought of it, you know. Thank you so much, Al. That's
Thank you.
been a close touch. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. See you next
Sure.
week. Bye.